NPR had sent me to this little tiny Maya village in the Yucatan, about 2 hours from Cancun, kind of there, nestled in the tropical rainforest there. And I was going to do a story about attention, actually. There's been some interesting studies that Maya kids have better attention in certain situations than European American kids. And I was really trying to figure out what was going on with this. When I got there, I met a couple of parents, a couple of moms that really just like shifted my whole sense of what parenting was in the span of like 3 days, essentially. These moms had a completely different relationship with their children than I had ever seen in San Francisco, where I was living, how I'd ever been raised myself. First of all, there was very little bickering, arguing. There was no yelling. There was no resistance, is what I wrote down in my notebook. And I kept thinking, like, the children aren't resisting the parents and the parents aren't resisting the children. And like I say in the book, like my way of parenting was like this white knuckle ride on a Cat 5 Rapid. It's loud, it's dramatic, there's a lot of talking, energy. And the Maya moms in this village, like, I felt like I was on this slow, gentle river, kind of meandering through this valley. And yet the kids were incredible. They were kind to their siblings. They were generous. I saw kids share potato chips with their little siblings without being asked. And they were incredibly, incredibly helpful. So one morning I was with Maria de Los Angeles. I was in her kitchen and we were chatting, and her 12-year-old daughter was on spring break, and she woke up around 10:30, 11, walked past me and her mom and started washing the dishes from breakfast that morning. Nobody asked her.
Oh my God.
There's no church chart on the wall. She wasn't getting an allowance. I mean, and Maria wasn't really surprised at all. She was like, she's 12 and she should know what to do. She said, she doesn't do it every day, but she should know by now. And I left there really just actually for the first time feeling hopeful. Like, maybe my problems with, like, I couldn't even walk out the door in the morning without Rosie hitting me. And here this mom had, 3 daughters who were incredibly kind and helpful with each other. And I realized, like, maybe it's not me or Rosie, but maybe it's my culture. Like, maybe it's my culture hasn't taught me the best, easiest way to parent. And what I've actually been taught is actually a really hard way to parent, and a way that generates a lot of conflict between children and their parents.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating to see that. And you talk about, like, the parents and the Mayan parents, like, they don't praise them. The kids develop this sense of responsibility. It's really fascinating. And you also talk to, so I love how you like dive into it. You're like, let me learn all this about this. And you also talked to David Lancy. He was an anthropologist that we've had on the podcast on episode number 262, dear listener, if you want to go listen again. And he talked to us on the Mindful Mama podcast about why we're so weird, but maybe you can give us like a quick like recap, like what you saw about us when you looked at us through the lens of other cultures.
Yeah. So after I got back from that trip to the Yucatan, I started to read actually one of David's books, Anthropology of Childhood, and I started to really understand that this a parenting approach that's in the Yucatan is actually really common around the world. You can go to Tanzania, to Malaysia, you can go really every livable continent and find this approach. And what is actually weird is the way we parent. And we are really the outliers. And David enumerates about 50 things that we do that you really can't find anywhere else in the world. And many of those things we kind of take for granted. We think they're kind of universal, or every parent has to do them, and if you don't do them, you're not a good parent. When in fact, like, nothing could be further from the truth. That these things aren't universal. They're not rooted in science. They're not rooted in history. But we've kind of been brainwashed in a way to think that we need to do them. And a lot of them actually make our lives really stressful, and again, cause a lot of conflict between parents and children. You're hearing a theme. A lot about what's in the book is about minimizing conflict and really teaching children to cooperate with you. That's really what Maria in the Yucatan has done, is she's gotten her kids to cooperate with her and work with her as a team, instead of being kind of opposing her and, and being kind of a contrarian, which is what I was raising, a contrarian.
Yeah. I mean, we've even got like all the war metaphors for parenting. Like we need a united front, all that stuff. So what are some of the things that, you give us a few examples of the things that David mentioned that are like causing that we do differently? And when you say we, like Western culture, we're talking like US, Europe, Canada, Australia, kind of.
Yeah, like any European kind of ancestry is where this style of parenting originated, but it has a lot of people have documented that it's leaked over into kind of highly developed areas. So, right, if you go into cities in many countries, you will see it. So it's the dominant way of parenting in the U.S. But you can, if you kind of move out of your cultural comfort zone, you can find this other approach in the U.S. So one of the big things that we do that's really, really strange is that we think that children need to be entertained. And it is our job as a parent to do that entertainment, either actually us doing it. So for instance, when Rosie was little, when I spent time with her, I entertained her. It was either, stimulating her by play, teaching her something, sticking a screen in front of her, or we outsource that entertainment, right, with classes and sports and activities and parties and these things that anthropologists and psychologists call child-centered activities, things that are made specifically for children and they're kind of separate from the adult or the real world. So this is unheard of in places and unheard of in Western culture until about 100 years ago. But this has massive numbers of repercussions, including a lot of conflict, because parents can't entertain their children forever. It's very, very high intensity way of parenting and it's exhausting. And so we end up then, relying on screens and TVs and things, things like that. But the other thing it does is it separates the child from your world. And what it kind of breaks that team component that I'm talking about. When the child is not entertained and is not constantly in child-centered activities, they start to be interested in what you're doing. And if you let them in, so while you're cooking, while you're cleaning, maybe you're running errands on the weekends, yard work, your hobbies, your own work, if you just kind of leave them alone, but let them be around you, they start to want to do it. They start watching, they start asking to be involved. And this is how children learn. This is how children learn that's how Maria's daughter learned to do the dishes, is by being around her when she's doing the dishes, by being part of it and being included in those activities. So this is a huge, huge shift in the way we parent and has massive repercussions. The other big thing, point out last thing, is that we talk to children all the time and we tell them what to do all the time, like massively. Even if you don't think you're doing it, I guarantee you're doing it way more than most parents in the world.
Yeah, I agree. Oh, yeah. Well, I want to also say, but like with the entertainment thing, but you write about this too, but like that, then kids start to see us like that's our job, right? Like they start to see that I'm separate from the rest of the household. I don't have to do the things that everyone else does in the household. And mom and dad, their job is to entertain me, right? Like they're like in this special VIP zone in the household. Right. Which is, that's not like, this is, we don't even realize we're teaching our kids this, but we are teaching this. And yes, we definitely boss kids around all the time. This is like one of the big barriers to communication, like that I teach in mindful parenting is like this, that, I mean, we just are like, do this, do that, shoes on, shoes off, come here, go there. Climb up, climb down, don't do that. It's just like,
I tell people like
if you're 2, your world is a barrage of commands constantly.
Oh, constantly. And not just 2, right? I mean, I tell people like I accidentally recorded myself one day with Rosie I was doing a different assignment and I left the recorder on and I actually listened back to it. And that's when I realized like, holy cow, like I am constantly telling this child what to do. And if somebody was doing that to me, it would make me irate. It would make me a ball of anxiety and it would make me really mad. Like, stop telling me what to do. And the other thing I realized was because I was talking so much to her, which is what we're taught to do, pediatrician
Yeah,
told
that
me
was
that.
what your pediatrician.
Yes, narrate everything. I'm washing my hands now. I'm talking on the Zoom now, I wasn't listening to her. And she was like, she was only like, I think she was only like 2 when I did this, but she was really trying to tell me things. She was really trying to like contribute, and she was really trying to like make a point. And I was just completely not listening. And it hurt me so much to listen to that tape. I started crying. I was just like, wow, not only am I bossing her around, but I'm not giving her a voice at all. And, yeah, this has massive repercussions on children and the difference. So I tell people, like, record yourself or count your commands. You can use your phone to record yourself and then go back and count how many times you're telling the child something, whether it's a directive, like do this, don't do this, or feedback. Oh, that's great. Oh, that's the right way. Oh, I love that. Good job. Right. Like, this is still feedback to the child. Right. And I did this myself, and it was like 100 and some an hour. It was just like off the charts. And I'm not the only one. I count like at the park sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's off the chart. And there's actual studies with some hunter-gatherer groups in Africa where a researcher did this. And for kids in this one group, it's like 2 to 3 an hour.
Wow. And
when we were in Tanzania, I did it again with the moms there. And again, it was like even less than 2 an hour. And this is really interesting. The vast majority of the commands are actually requests for help. So, go grab the knife, or hold the cup, or grab the bowl, or help your sibling. And so the parents are actually using these commands to teach the child to be helpful. They're kind of reserving them for that really like important task. And otherwise, I want to point out, they're not just ignoring the child. Like, it is not at all. Instead, they're watching the child really, really closely to make sure that if they need help, they can step in, to kind of see where the child's skill level is. But it's this very attentive observation, and that's something you can't do if you're constantly talking to the child.
Catch new episodes of the Mindful Mama podcast and other free resources, including the Mindful Mom Guide at mindfulmamamentor.com. You can listen to every back catalog episode, including interviews with Dr. Dan Siegel, Ianla Van Zant, Sharon Salzberg, and get meditations, join our private Facebook group, and more. Go to mindfulmamamentor.com now. I'll see you there.